So most seniors say they want to stay in their own homes as they age. What is this concept of aging at home? Welcome to In-Home Senior Care. My name is Vitaly. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm going to dive into this today and talk about what it takes to age safely in your own home and some of the misconceptions about what senior care or senior housing, senior facilities, and some of the misconceptions around what you do get there or what you don't get there. So stick around. We're going to get into a lot of this conversation. If you're a caregiver, if you are an adult child helping to navigate the aging care waters for your loved one, this is for you. Anyway, so here's kind of the questions. Is it safe to think about staying home or aging at home? Can they really manage on their own, meaning your mom or your dad or your aging loved one? What happens when things change, when maybe they're safe for now, but maybe something happens that they're no longer safe? We're gonna get into all of that and talk about what aging in place really means or what it looks like and how to do it the right way. So what exactly is aging in place? So the simple definition is it's staying in your own home safely and independently and comfortably as you age. Now that statement about independently, obviously that will happen to a certain level, but somebody could still age safely in their own home beyond true independence of what they are personally doing for themselves and what someone else is coming in to actually help them manage kind of with the things they're no longer independent in, but overall they could still be independent in their own home with some care in place. So what is aging in place exactly? So kind of the official definition or maybe a simple definition is staying in your own home safely, independently, and comfortably as you age. Now, independently doesn't necessarily mean that they can do every single thing, right? That's where aging in place and that independence being preserved for that person, still being independent, but maybe getting help with a few things that allow them to safely be there. So why does this matter? Well, the home is a familiar environment. I have a number of 75%. I think it's much higher than that actually, of people who really say or voice that they would prefer to age at home if it's at all possible. And it's because the home is something that's very sacred to most of us. That familiarity with that space and just something where we can relax and let down and just feel ourselves in our own place. The emotional security of the home and what it brings and the memories that are built in, and then the independence and dignity. And again, you think of the independence from a different perspective. Independence obviously means that we don't need help from others. But when we think about somebody trying to age in place, that independence can be preserved, even though some parts of it or a little bit of help with something that they may need to be assisted for them. Okay, so for a long time, we've kind of had this canned or one-size-fits-all answer. And that answer was nursing home. And what do I mean by that? Well, doctors will a lot of times say, well, you know what? Start thinking about nursing home for your mom, or it may be time for your mom to go into the nursing home. Or the other statement would be like, well, your mom is a falls risk, and so she really should be in a nursing home. And so we've kind of battled that for years to say we need to be better educated about all the options and about all the thoughts and especially the desires that people have about what happens to them as they age and how they will receive the care that maybe they do need, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. Now, fast forward to today, I don't know, maybe this is 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, but fast forward to today, we have transitioned from that nursing home one-size-fits-all to what now I would call senior facility or assisted living facility. And so again, you kind of get this standard answer. Start thinking about a nursing facility or a senior facility or assisted living facility, because maybe this is what needs to happen. And so I think as most of life, and including this, it is much more nuanced, meaning what? Meaning that there's a lot more to consider, there's a lot more to think through and make sure that you understand. So the one-size-fits-all answer was nursing home, and for a long time, the doctors, the professionals, the experts would say, well, your mom's a falls risk, so she should definitely be in a nursing home. you should think about putting your loved one in a nursing home. And it was kind of that one statement. Well, fast forward today, and that nursing home answer has now changed to assisted living facility or a senior living or a senior facility. And so what I want to offer for you today is the idea that we need to really think more nuanced. And we really need to focus on that person who is to be receiving the care and involve them in that conversation and see what their desires are and what their wants are. As most of life tends to be much more nuanced than a one-size-fits-all about this is how this works or that's how that works. And especially here in the USA, because we are all very individualistic, and what I want may be very different from the next person, and so on and so forth. So let me just kind of address a few misconceptions about senior living facilities, and let me just make a statement. This video is not to bash senior living facilities or not to say that they don't do a great job or any of those kinds of things. This video is just to help you better understand the realities of what's offered, what's out there, and then compare that to what aging in place might look like. Again, the falls risk is a big statement that gets thrown around. Your mom is a falls risk, or she's at risk for falls, and so she should be in a facility. And so there's a huge assumption with that statement that in a facility, somehow the risk of falls is going to be diminished. And in reality, that risk of falls becomes even more acute in a facility. Why? Well, because A, you don't have one-on-one staffing. You don't have someone with your mom the whole time. You don't have that connection. Even if you did, the risk of falling doesn't necessarily go down. The fact that somebody would probably find your mom if she fell and get help, that might happen a little bit quicker if she's versus her being at home alone without having anybody there, that's for sure. The truth of it is that moving into a senior facility will not lower the risk of fall. The risk of falls will remain the same or even go up even higher because it's going to depend on what's actually happening and the engagement and the actual care that's being provided. So here's a few more misconceptions. So that they provide one-on-one care all the time. Of course, most of you would know that to begin with. That's not true. So the facilities will have a ratio model of care, meaning they have X number of care staff compared to the number of residents who are living there. And so they will ratio or like share the care between everybody else, meaning they're coming in for different things and helping out, but nobody's there dedicated one-on-one with that client. And then misconception number 2 is they're going to take care of everything. It's a thought that enters a lot of times. It's why a facility seems like a good one-size-fits-all. We just put mom here and they'll take care of everything. But it's not true. You have to understand that. So they're going to cover basic needs, but they're not going to be able to provide everything. And from facility A to facility B to facility Z, they're all going to be different in how they care and the packaging that they have and what costs are included in the care plan and what things will be a la carte and all those kinds of things. You need to think about that. You will still need to be the point person to make sure that your mom's doing okay, to advocate, to kind of oversee what they're doing, to make sure that what the care plan calls for is actually being provided, and then making sure the appointments that are being set up and for your mom to go see the doctor, and then general advocacy, right? Making sure that you're advocating for her needs. Number 3, that they closely monitor every change in health. Fantastic facilities will do a good job of overseeing their residents and what they're doing. But again, it doesn't remove your role of being the advocate and double checking and making sure that that's actually happening. So misconception number 4 is that medication management means zero risk. Again, the facilities, most of the time, they're going to do a fantastic job of managing, but it doesn't mean that errors can't happen, right? So it's just something that you need to be realistic about. Number 5 is that they'll keep them socially engaged automatically. So this is one of the biggest selling points that facilities have, is that we don't don't want seniors to be isolated. We want to bring them into a social environment. Keep in mind, activities are offered, but you still have to participate in them. So your loved one, your mom, would still have to be coming down and doing the activities and participating. And many seniors in facilities are not participating, and they're still just as lonely and isolated in their own apartments as they were at home, maybe partly due to their nature. My mom would fall into that category because she's just not an extroverted person. She just doesn't enjoy really being out and doing things as much socially. And so that doesn't necessarily automatically mean that your loved one will be plugged in and will be doing activities just because they're offered. Misconception number 6 is that meals are personalized to their preference. Again, just the very nature of how facilities are, they don't function like that, right? They can't do that. So meals are typically scheduled, they're standardized, limited in customization. Again, I am not whatsoever denigrating the meals that are being served there. Most of them offer fantastic options for meals, but it is different than someone cooking to your order to what you would prefer in your own home. So misconception number 7 is staff will immediately respond to every time my mom needs help. So they will do their best, but many times there is that 10, 15, 20-minute lag time for them to get there after a pendant press. Why? Well, because they're trying to serve everybody in a building, and so they've got to, if they're working with someone at the moment, they have to finish that before they come over there. Number 8 misconception is they provide transportation for everything. So transportation in a building is going to be scheduled. It's going to be a group type thing. So they may have a day that they're going to the grocery store. They may have another day where they're going somewhere else, but individual appointments to like doctors or whatever else, that will not really be able to be handled most of the time by the facility, because obviously they couldn't do that for every resident and have that bus driving all over the place. Number 9, housekeeping means their space will always be clean. Again, keep in mind, it's not a daily thing. It's done, but it's not done deep cleaning, and you may still need to be involved in some of those kinds of things. And here's the last one that I wanted to really drive home, is that if their needs increase, the facility will automatically just adjust. So understand that the facility may have a ceiling to the level of care that they provide, and so depending on the need that arises or the new normal that shows up, that facility may have to say, you know what, we've loved taking care of your mom, but she needs this and we're not able to do this here. The option may be to move out and to move to a different facility, or the option may be to bring in additional care. And so here's the place where there's a significant number of our clients who we care for in a facility where they're already receiving support from the facility, and we're coming in with a second layer of that care that's now specifically catered to that client. And why does that happen? Well, it typically is kind of this scenario where the facility is doing what they are able to do, but they've kind of reached a limit. And so there's an option, either the family kind of step up and somebody shows up and helps a little bit, or families will opt to actually pay for additional care to do that. Another misconception is that there's always a nurse watching over your loved one, right? The nursing staffing will depend on facility and not always necessarily a 24/7 scenario. That's why you need to understand that. So here's kind of my case for why aging in place is a great choice. Obviously, I believe in this because I've been doing this since 2003, and I see what an amazing difference it makes in the lives of seniors who have that desire, who want to stay where they're at, and they love their home, and they want to remain there. The emotional reasons are so strong, right? The comfort, the memories, all that identity that's tied to that home. And again, remember, for a lot of the people that we're caring for now, my wife and I have probably averaged a move every 5 to 6 years, except with the last house. We've been in there now almost 9 years. But that older generation, when they got into a home, they stayed there for, so they raised their kids there like that. That was a little bit different. And so a lot of times that's what we're asking them to let go of, this home that's been this just source of comfort for them for such a long time. And then practical reasons that I think are very, very powerful. It's what we're providing is one-on-one care, right? It's very different than the ratio of care and then whoever's on staff or whoever's on shift. It's that care is being provided one-on-one with someone that shows up and dedicates their whole shift to your loved one, making sure that whatever needs they have are being met. Honoring your loved one by caring for them with dignity. Because at home, we can do that much more effectively because it is their space and we're coming into that space and we're treating it with respect and with honor and making sure that they feel like we're there not to take over and to tell them what to do, but there to just come alongside and say, what can I do for you today? How can we make today better? And then it's the easiest to adjust. So if you think about long term, whatever is today, 10 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, all those things will change, and we don't know exactly when, and we don't know exactly how much more care is needed. With the one-on-one care, it is easy to make those adjustments up or even down, because if somebody brings in care like after some sort of an episode, maybe they've got a lot of care, but over time they won't need as much, and so we'll be able to back that down. And it truly is the lowest cost option for minimal care. 24-hour care gets very expensive with one-on-one care. With home care in the home, 24-hour care is the best care you can have, but it's a very costly option. When you think about having services just a few days a week, just some hours, just to kind of help with a little bit, it is truly the most economical way to go in the beginning, and allows and buys time for you, because you could always go to plan B. You can always go to a facility if you've had services in home for a number of months and you're like, man, I still think this is still going to be the best option, and you're working through that. You can always make that decision later, and I will throw this argument out there. I'm not offering financial advice, but if you can prolong that move for another 4 or 5 years, certainly you can think and maybe assume that even the real estate will hopefully appreciate during that time before you have to sell that home and move to a facility and those kinds of things. Let's talk a little bit about what aging in place actually looks like. So number one, we talk about safety. We talk about, when we actually talk about falls risks, what are they and how can we address them, and how can we write a care plan that covers that idea that we want to make sure we help that person, that hopefully they don't have a fall, and if they do, it's very minimal and it doesn't hurt them. We think about stairs, bathrooms, and rugs, and number one, it's to put in place the care that stops that person from having to do those, right? So let's say the laundry's downstairs and you gotta go up and down that long flight of stairs. Well, that's obviously adding to the risk of falls because that's a high factor. And then bathrooms, is there clutter in there? Is there stuff? Is there grab bars? Are we set up for success, or are we set up for potentially for issues in there? Rugs, my mom loves her rugs, and so it's one of those things that you kind of have to go at some point, okay, yeah, I get it, I understand it, but safety is going to be a higher priority than what that living room looks like. And so how do we get to that to make sure that whatever potential tripping hazards are in there, we can address that, we can make sure that's handled, because that's important, right? Because we don't want people to fall. Medication management would be another one. There's lots of options, whether it's us actually doing that, or there's lots of third-party options even from a pharmacy where they can pre-package and make sure that things are so well organized that there's going to be very low probability of mistakes, whether the client, the senior loved one of yours that's still managing or trying to take their medications on their own, and we're coming in for just a couple of days, which obviously that wouldn't account for us being able to oversee all the medications. But if we've got them organized in such a way that it's such a low probability that they would make a mistake with it because it's labeled, it tells them what's the date, what time of day, and all those kinds of things, it goes such a long way to make sure that they're set up for success. And then the last one of that is the emergency response. What happens if your mom does have a fall? What's the solution, or what's the plan, right? So like an emergency response, we call it PERS, or Personal Emergency Response System. So you've seen ads on TV for help, I've fallen and I can't get up, and those kinds of things. So there's, most companies who do security now, they will offer something. There's Lifeline, there's all these different ones. Bottom line is, it's important to have something that is a pendant system, or even better would be an automation system that it would automatically detect a fault. Now keep in mind, most of those are done in such a way that it doesn't have to be a 911 call if there's a fall. Somebody would come on the speaker and they would say, hey, Dorothy, are you okay? Do you need help? And they could say, I've fallen, are you hurt? No, I'm okay. And they could have responders who could be their neighbor next door, it could be one of the family people, and somebody could come over and actually help the person get back up. And of course, if they are hurt and if it's more urgent, then of course they can call 911. Okay, so that's safety. Number 2 is support, and we're talking about activities of daily living, so things that we're helping with. So maybe it's bathing, maybe it's dressing, mobility, assistance, preparing meals, and just kind of helping around the home, just providing the support for the things that are needed. And you as a family, as a daughter or whatever, you're probably already involved in some of that. And this is where, in order for that aging in place component, you would think about potentially turning that over to a professional so that you're not burning out in the process. And this is more of a plan versus like, well, we're just kind of trying to hold this together. I don't, we all have enough things on our plate. And so to be able to have a professional approach to this, and then transportation being another one, right? Because it's the doctor's appointments, it's maybe the hair appointment, maybe it's church. It's all sorts of things. It's the routine that is your loved ones, that your mom's routine, that we want to come alongside and help make sure that whatever parts of that, the independence isn't quite there anymore, we can help with that. And then the rest of the independence still stays, right? Because we don't want to take over and do tasks that your mom is able to still manage on her own, but we want to help her with a few that she's struggling with so that that doesn't become a point of frustration and it doesn't become something where it diminishes the quality of life. And then the third one is social and emotional health. Loneliness is a significant health risk. Everybody minimizes it because nobody really wants to draw that attention and to say, hey, I'm so lonely. These days seem like they take forever because I'm always alone. And so that reality of having someone that comes in, and again, unlike an environment where there's activities going on downstairs, but I would have to go down and insert myself into those. And if I'm not that type of person, I'm just going to stay in my apartment and not go down there. Well, in the home care, that caregiver's coming over, and because it's one-on-one, it's much more natural and engaging to just sit and talk with that caregiver as well as that caregiver is doing some things and helping out with a few things. That companionship and that connection is such an important factor. It's how we look at as a fundamental layer of care. No matter what we're doing for that client, that companionship is a fundamental layer that's actually making everything else function the way it should. And it's cognitive engagement, right? It's having that conversation. It's talking about, the current events, whatever's going on, but it's stimulating to the mind to have a conversation, to actually talk to another person. How do you make aging in place work? I've done a number of videos on the idea of you've got to have some conversations. And those conversations don't just happen at one time. You can't have those conversations in the middle of a crisis, right? It's probably too late. But you need to have some conversations and talk about what's important to your loved one. Talk about how you want their wishes to be honored and how you can put together something that would allow them to stay where they're at instead of having to let go of all that and go somewhere where they're not as excited to go. Now, that may still need to be a reality, but maybe we can push it off by a few years. That's a conversation that you should be having. Then you should do a home safety assessment. Now, if you'd like, we would love to help you with that. We would love to come in and help do a safety assessment, help you understand what are some ways practically that you could approach at making that space a lot safer than it is, right? We can never bring the risk factors down to zero. It just doesn't work like that. But we can help eliminate some things and lower that, and then provide some education and go, this is the best way you could do that, because we all need to accept some level of risk in whatever it is that we're doing. And then building a care plan. Number 3 would be build a care plan, even if it's not yet needed. What would it look like if we were to bring somebody in? What could they help with? And you kind of can create a little bit of a care plan and go, if we did this, what would that do? How would that lower the risk? How would that increase safety and security? And how would that help me as a caregiver, as the son or the adult daughter, to have better peace of mind, to have less stress? And then bring in the help sooner than later. Again, so much of the engagement we get when somebody says, okay, we need care, can you start today? I have to tell you, it is the worst way for us to start is to try to start today. Because keep in mind, the people that work for us who are amazing at the work they do, the caregivers, they're human beings. They have families. They have things that are going on. And so for us to call them and ask them to drop everything to go to someone's home because they're looking for care to start today, it's not ideal. It also doesn't give us the time and the ability to properly match and select the right caregiver who we think would be the best for this scenario for this client. It forces us to be very reactionary. And so that's why I say get care in sooner than later, because you're better off if you get kind of maintenance care before something bad happens, because then your choices are limited and you're starting out with a higher care package than you really maybe needed to, but now you have to, right? Because you're dealing with a new reality with a situation that makes everything a little bit more dire. And so caregivers don't replace family. So think about that. The idea of like, well, my daughter's been helping me or my daughter will help me. Yes, but that is a limiting factor because that is an obligatory relationship and we're all dealing with more than we probably should be. We're all overcommitted. And so the idea of having a caregiver who's helping with a few things will actually allow you to be a better daughter because you'll have more time when you come over to actually spend and enjoy a conversation over coffee or over a meal versus just showing up and being a busybody because you got to get things done. You got to get so much, so many things completed because you got to get back to your own family. I know that moving mom into a facility can really feel like a one-stop shop because you kind of go, I can just check my mind at the door and know that they're going to take care of everything. But the truth is you will have to be way more engaged than you think. You will have to be an advocate and you will have to, hover a little bit in the sense to make sure that things are going the way they should be. So the facility, as I said before, may reach the limit of what they can provide or how much care they can do. And then they're going to come back to you and say, okay, here's where we're at. We're dealing with this. And so your mom is a candidate for discharge because we can't do these things that she's now needing. Maybe she's a little slow for that morning routine. And so they can't spend as much time as she needs to help her, with her morning routine because they've got to get to all the other residents there. And so sometimes we will take on those clients and help them stay where they're at because now this is home and they've already gotten accustomed, and then another move just makes it more challenging. And so just know that that's something that's a potential at that facility will request that you bring in more care. Understand, just like at home, if we're providing care and we sense that that person needs more, we may have that conversation with you and to say, hey, we're doing 3 days a week. Mom really is struggling with these things. We really think we ought to have more days so she could have more care. In a facility, you may have the same conversation with them, and so you'll have to figure out what's the next step. So aging in place is a beautiful option. Really honors the dignity of the person, of their home, allows them to stay where all their memories are, and allows them to really receive the care on their own terms, really customized as to what types of food are you eating, what sorts of activities do you enjoy, and we can participate with that or take them to, right? We can take people on outings, we can take them to a museum, we can take them, whatever the normal is for your loved one, we can help them maintain that routine. And you as family don't have to be the key driver of that or the key component of that. You don't have to figure this out alone. We're here. We'd love to connect with you and have this conversation. We'd love to hear from you. Please comment, ask questions if you'd like to see content on something more specific. Please let us know. All right, we will see you in the next one. Take care.